The volcanic island of Iwo Jima was less a battlefield and more a scar upon the earth. Black ash, sulfur smoke, and shattered bunkers filled the air with the stench of death. To Japan, it was the final fortress. To America, a stepping stone. 750 miles closer to Tokyo, the island trembled under artillery fire as Japanese soldiers emerged from caves for desperate, suicidal attacks. Amid this chaos, a new sound echoed, the shriek of Merlin engines. The first P-51 Mustangs of the 15th Fighter Group landed on Iwo's South Field on March 6. Even before the island was declared secure, the pilots lived in foxholes beside their aircraft, half buried in the sand. Captain Harry Krim Jr., just 23, wiped grime from his goggles. "This place smells like hell," he muttered. A fellow pilot replied, "That's because it is." Gunfire still cracked at night. The Americans slept with pistols under their pillows and tools in their hands. Mechanics, drenched in sweat and ash, worked under flares to attach sleek aluminum drop tanks beneath silver wings. The P-51s shimmered like ghosts in the volcanic glow. Every man knew why he was here. The mission was madness: fly single-engine fighters all the way to Tokyo and back. A 1,500-mile round trip over nothing but ocean. No alternate bases. No rescue if an engine failed. As one sergeant said, staring toward the smoking horizon, "If the Pacific doesn't kill us, Japan will." Yet amid sulfur and death, these young men prepared to turn the impossible into strategy, to make the Pacific itself a runway to war. Inside a dimly lit command tent, a map of Japan lay spread across a rough wooden table. Major James Van Day stood at its center, tracing a line from Iwo Jima to Tokyo with his finger. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low but certain, "we make history." The pilots around him fell silent. Their faces, lit by a swaying oil lamp, showed the mix of fear and pride only young soldiers could wear. Outside, the air rumbled with the distant cough of engines being tested. Harry Krim leaned to his wingman. "Lieutenant Felix Scott, you ever flown more than 500 miles in one go?" Scott shook his head. "Never over empty ocean." The Mustangs were miracles of American engineering, each powered by a Packard-built Merlin engine, 1,695 horsepower of precision, with two 110-gallon drop tanks. Their range stretched beyond 1,600 miles. "These tanks," Van Day explained, tapping a silver canister on the table, "are our lifeline. We drop them before combat. Range and agility, all in one package." By night, mechanics hammered and riveted by torchlight. The island glowed with blue sparks and orange firelight. In the distance, Mount Suribachi loomed like a tombstone. Krim sat on the wing of his Mustang, whispering to the machine, "You and me, girl, all the way there and back." He glanced skyward. The stars over the Pacific burned cold and infinite, and tomorrow, they would be beneath him. Dawn broke cold and clear. Rows of silver Mustangs lined the runway, shimmering like blades. At 7:45 a.m., engines roared to life, shaking the volcanic ground. The 15th, 21st, and 506th fighter groups were ready, over 100 fighters. As the first plane lifted off, Krim's voice crackled over the radio, "See you in Tokyo, boys." They climbed in formation, turning north-northwest toward Japan. Beneath them stretched an endless ocean, no land, no clouds, just blue void. For 3 hours, pilots stared at their instruments, checking fuel, all pressure, coolant. Every vibration felt like doom. Lieutenant Scott muttered into his mic, "Anyone else feel like the Pacific staring back?" "Just don't blink," Krim replied. Suddenly, far on the horizon, a faint white peak. Mount Fuji, even from 50 miles away, it pierced the haze like a ghostly crown. The men cheered in disbelief. They had done the impossible, reached Japan on single-engine fighters. Below, Japanese radar stations blinked alive. Operators shouted, "Impossible!" Single-engine aircraft, hundreds of miles from any base. Sirens wailed. In airfields across Honshu, pilots scrambled to their planes. Among them was Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, Japan's most revered ace. One eye blinded, 64 victories to his name. He fastened his goggles and said softly, "If they've come this far, we are finished." He climbed into his Mitsubishi Zero, the rising sun glinting across its worn paint. The hunt was on. Over Tokyo Bay, the Mustangs dropped their fuel tanks, silver shells tumbling into the sea below. The fighters suddenly felt lighter, alive. Ahead, the bombers appeared, B-29 superfortresses, silver giants lumbering toward the capital. Krim's voice steadied. "Let's give the bombers some room to breathe." High above, Saburo Sakai led his squadron of Zeros into the sun. He dove first, guns blazing, tracers streaking like golden comets. His rounds missed, the Mustang pulled away, climbing as if gravity had lost its claim. Sakai's gunner gasped, "They're too fast." The Mustangs struck back with surgical precision. They refused to turn fight. Instead, they used boom-and-zoom tactics, diving, firing, climbing away. Captain Felix Scott lined up a 0 in his gun sight. Got you, he fired short bursts. The Japanese plane burst into flame, spinning downward in silence. In less than 15 minutes, 21 Japanese fighters fell. Only 2 Mustangs were lost. Below, the B-29s unleashed torrents of incendiary bombs, setting Tokyo's industrial heart ablaze. Firestorms roared through neighborhoods. The air turned orange and black. Sakai's damaged 0 limped through the smoke. He stared upward, the sky filled with silver wings gleaming above the inferno. This is the end, he whispered. The Mustangs turned south, victorious yet hollow. The Pacific awaited their return. Tokyo burned. From the air, the city resembled a living furnace, molten rivers of flame consuming the night. Pilots could see firestorms spiraling thousands of feet high, reaching even their altitude. In one cockpit, Krim gazed downward. God help them, he murmured. His co-pilot only replied, we're the gods tonight. As dawn broke over the smoldering ruins, the P-51s regrouped. They had done the impossible, escorted bombers to Japan and back. On landing, the pilots staggered from their cockpits. Faces pale, eyes hollow from 8 hours in the air. Mechanics cheered, but the men only nodded, too drained to celebrate. In the following weeks, Mustangs became a constant presence over Japan. They strafed airfields, factories, and rail lines, annihilating what remained of Japanese air power. Sakai, grounded by fuel shortages, watched helplessly as his homeland's skies filled with American metal. They control even the wind now, he said quietly to a fellow pilot. By May, the 7th Fighter Command had destroyed over 70 Japanese aircraft, yet the Pacific had its own vengeance to unleash. On June 1, 1945, 148 P-51s took off for Osaka Midway. They encountered a monstrous weather front, a swirling black wall rising 23,000 feet. Radio chatter erupted into panic. I can't see. Pull up, pull up. Planes collided, vanished, spun into the sea. 27 aircraft were lost, none to the enemy, all to the Pacific's fury. Even nature had joined the war. Tokyo burned. From the air, the city resembled a living furnace, molten rivers of flame consuming the night. Pilots could see firestorms spiraling thousands of feet high, reaching even their altitude. In one cockpit, Krim gazed downward. God help them, he murmured. His co-pilot only replied, we're the gods tonight. As dawn broke over the smoldering ruins, the P-51s regrouped. They had done the impossible, escorted bombers to Japan and back. On landing, the pilots staggered from their cockpits. Faces pale, eyes hollow from 8 hours in the air. Mechanics cheered, but the men only nodded, too drained to celebrate. In the following weeks, Mustangs became a constant presence over Japan. They strafed airfields, factories, and rail lines, annihilating what remained of Japanese air power. Sakai, grounded by fuel shortages, watched helplessly as his homeland's skies filled with American metal. They control even the wind now, he said quietly to a fellow pilot. By May, the 7th Fighter Command had destroyed over 70 Japanese aircraft, yet the Pacific had its own vengeance to unleash. On June 1, 1945, 148 P-51s took off for Osaka Midway. They encountered a monstrous weather front, a swirling black wall rising 23,000 feet. Radio chatter erupted into panic. I can't see. Pull up, pull up. Planes collided, vanished, spun into the sea. 27 aircraft were lost, none to the enemy, all to the Pacific's fury. Even nature had joined the war. After Black Friday, the survivors of the Mustang squadrons stood silent. On Iwo Jima's scorched runway, broken propellers and twisted metal lay scattered among the rocks. The ocean wind carried the scent of fuel and salt. Harry Krim removed his flight helmet, staring at the horizon. We've beaten the enemy, he said softly, but the ocean, she still fights us. No one replied. The men had learned that victory had its own kind of grief. In Tokyo, Lieutenant Saburo Sakai sat at a wooden desk lit by a single candle, his right eye covered by a bandage. His left reflected the flicker of flame as he wrote in his diary. Today I saw the future and it belongs to America. Their new fighter is superior in every way but one. They refuse to fight where we hold the advantage. We defend our homeland with machines of another age. The air war is lost. Weeks later, Japan would surrender. But long before the atomic bombs, long before formal surrender, the P-51 Mustang had already sealed the empire's fate by conquering distance itself. The Americans had erased Japan's last illusion of safety. The Pacific, once a vast barrier, had become a narrow corridor patrolled by silver predators. As dusk fell over Iwo Jima, the surviving pilots watched the sky turn crimson, the same shade as the rising sun they had flown toward and returned from. For a moment, the air was still, no engines, no gunfire. Just the whisper of the wind over wings that had changed the world.